Almost no one cares about crypto at the moment because, again, gold and silver has been rallying extremely hard over the last couple months. And this is at the same exact time that, crypto has been in a downtrend and just selling off for almost a whole year. Now, during this time, if we actually look at the facts in front of us, gold is at over $5,000 for the first time in history, which is insane. And if we're just looking at the chart here in front of us for gold, I mean, this is just a wild looking chart, especially when we think about this being for gold. Now, also, silver is also rallying. In fact, silver hit well over $100 per ounce. And if we're looking at both gold and silver, they are now almost over a $40 trillion market cap. Gold is sitting at 34.64 trillion, while silver is almost at $6 trillion. This is crazy when we think about the market cap of crypto just being around current valuations. If we're looking at the market itself, a $2.96 trillion market cap. That's just how undervalued crypto, in my opinion, really is, because again, I do believe that crypto will, go significantly higher. And I do think that we could hit well over a $6 trillion market cap. I just think that at the moment, crypto is mainly overlooked. It's extremely undervalued. And I think that it's oversold at this moment as well. Now, if we are looking at crypto itself and we're looking at the fear and greed index, we are at about roughly 29. We have been in a sharp decline over the last roughly 30 days. And I do think that we'll most likely hit the extreme fear levels yet again. And that's because, again, nobody cares about crypto. And the market has been, for the most part, selling off in a downtrend. Now, looking at a few things, I want to go back to gold and silver because, again, like I said, over the last couple weeks, and even the last couple months, technically, people have been talking about gold and silver quite a bit. Crypto exchanges are not safe. It does not matter the size of the exchange either. Bybit, the fourth largest crypto exchange by trading volume, recorded one of the largest crypto hacks in history back in February, where $1.4 billion was stolen. And if we're looking at some of the top 10 crypto hacks in history, most of these are resulting from major exchanges. So where do we store our crypto outside of cold storage devices? Well, iTrust Capital offers premium custody accounts, which is one of the safest places to store your crypto because these are fully closed loop systems, which are designed to isolate and protect assets. And the best part about this is that if you are holding digital assets on their platform, they can only be withdrawn in USD linked to a US bank account, which means no external wallet connections can happen, which reduces the exposure to phishing or unauthorized transfers. So if you guys do want to tap into one of the safest places to lock up your crypto, you could sign up utilizing my link down in the description below right now, where you deposit $1,000 and you get a free $100 funding bonus today. Now, I have no issue with gold and silver. In fact, I mentioned back in 2022 all the way up until about roughly 2024 to be buying gold and silver. And if you guys go back to most of those videos, you will know that I have been saying this. In fact, I've been talking about this gold tier system, essentially potentially rising, which would be a gold-backed financial system where, yes, crypto is still a part of it. Now, also, I mentioned gold and silver as being a great hedge against any significant financial crisis. Now, this move on gold and silver, everyone is clinging to some sort of narrative. Ultimately, I do think that a lot of this is just from, hype. I think that a lot of it is hype driven, FOMO driven. Reason why is because, again, most of these markets outside of stocks, like, crypto really hasn't been doing much. So I think that a lot of people are chasing, the green. But also I think that, gold and silver are pumping for various other reasons as well. I know that there's a lot of, talks about a supply shock. Typically when we see narratives like that, they don't really play out. But I also have been keeping a close eye on Google Trends because in the last, we're talking about all the way going back to 2004. This is gold. So the search terms for gold just hit 100. Typically, this is where you start to see a potential top forming. Now, I've talked about gold and silver in the Discord group as being overbought on the RSI macro charts. I still think that that's a good, indicator to look at, although it's not extremely accurate because it's typically a lagging factor. But if we're looking at gold and if we're looking at silver, silver itself is at all-time highs in terms of Google Trend searches, which means retail is looking up gold and silver in a big way. This is why I think FOMO is really driving a lot of this price action. But this is at the same exact time that crypto is at the lowest levels since going back to roughly the May summertime bottom back in 2025, and then also, nearing the lows of 2024 as well. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and mention, oh, hey, we're going to see a massive rotation from gold and silver into crypto. However, I do think that once we start to see crypto bounce back, if we can have that major run up yet again, like similar, cycles before, I do think that a lot of money will trickle from gold and silver into crypto just to ride the waves. Typically, we start to see market rotations happen. That's exactly what supported markets in past cycles as well. We typically start to see, even in crypto, we see Bitcoin run first, Ethereum next, and then altcoins follow next. It's just capital rotation. I do think that the same will happen here as well, but we need to be very cautious during this time as well, because again, Bitcoin is still kind of ranging here on the 24-hour span. We did have a nice little drop earlier today. This is the Sunday close. We are still in higher low territory on this chart, and if we can manage to hold the 702 fib retracement level around 85.7k, then hey, this is a very good area where we could potentially bottom and start to chop back to the upside. So I would love for this to play out. We have to wait a little bit. We have to see how the market looks throughout this week, especially with stocks reopening. But I'm definitely focused on this chart having a much larger rebound, which also should carry the rest of the crypto market. But this entire zone down here between like 84.2k to about 87.2k is exactly what I'm focused on. But I'm mainly looking at the daily candle closes here and just looking at that higher low and higher high structure forming. The main thing that I'm looking at with Bitcoin now is a daily candle close over 97k. It's roughly around like 97.2k. That would be bullish structure, which is exactly what we want to look out for. But also, just kind of looking at Bitcoin on the, weekly time frame, we just had a close right around the prior lows. It's nothing crazy. In fact, we did create a lower low on the weekly candle close. However, we closed right around the highs going back to March of 2025. So this is not a bad area for us to close around. It's showing us that we are, forming support right around that resistance level from March of 2025. So let's see if that can hold. I haven't really looked at higher time frame structure like on the monthly or anything like that, but the main thing that I'm really looking at is just lower time frame bullish structure forming. Now with XRP, again, XRP kind of a same sort of situation here where we just hit the 702, or at least close to the 702. We need a lot more work to really get bullish on XRP again. The main thing that I am looking at here is ultimately flipping this $2.11 zone on the weekly, getting a weekly candle close over that. That's going to be a very big moment for XRP, because once we reclaim that, we will have a much larger breakout. Now, again, on the weekly candle close, we need to close above this level and also start to build back to some of the prior lows. Mainly, I'm looking at $2.36. But so far, this is a very good setup. We did find some support around the 702, which is good to see, but it's too early to call it. Again, on the 24-hour view, we have a slight higher low. I wouldn't really consider this a higher low. It's more so, finding support around the recent closes. But I would like to see XRP maintain these lows, reclaim $2, and start to build back to the prior highs. On the daily, it's pretty clear. We need to break over $2.17. Then we need to break over $2.36. And then after that, we start to build back to these other highs, which I would say like the next key one would be $2.65. But XRP, it doesn't look too bad. I know that this sell-off is a little bit rough for those that have been holding for a while or maybe even bought recently. But the main thing that we are looking at here, especially on the fib retracement levels, is maintaining these key lows. So we should not really lose the 786 if XRP is going to remain macro bullish. Right now, lower time frame view, it's going to look rough, but the macro view here for XRP still looks pretty decent. Now, I will say this market has been brutal, and I've mentioned this many times over. I made multiple posts on X about it. I probably sound like a broken record at this point saying, hey, guess what? The market sucks. But I did say sentiment is decimated. No hope, no positive outlook, just pure negativity. Crypto holders are watching gold and silver rally hard and wondering why not crypto. The thing about this, and I will say this 100 times over, I will continuously say it. When we think about gold or when we think about silver, The gains on both of those assets in the last roughly 20 years is not even close to the gains in crypto in the last roughly 5-10 years. Some of these altcoins, like XRP for an example, we look at XRP and where it's at currently, okay? I just want to go off of the bear market lows. We're talking about in the span of roughly, now it's a little bit more than 1,300 days, but if we're looking at this, going off of those lows to our current price action, it's up 549%. It rallied well over 1,142%. Silver alone in the last 20 years, and it's a little bit over 20 years, is up about 2,000%. If you bought XRP back in the 2020 lows, you're up 2,069% in 6 years, not 20 years, in 6 years. And I'm not just using XRP as like oh, hey, look, XRP has done well. No, in fact, most of these cryptocurrencies, even if we think about Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin from the 2022 lows to our current price action on this chart is up 439%. At the prior high, it was up 675%. Not to mention, back in 2020 and 2018 and things like that, I mean, it's up 3,700%, 2,500%. So again, crypto is doing just fine. Everyone is trying to compare gold and silver's run to crypto. It's a little bit different, right? And I've always said gold and silver is not going to make you rich. It's very good for wealth preservation. And I do agree on that statement. I do think that it's good for wealth preservation, not wealth creation. But I also said that it feels as if we are in the middle of exchanges collapsing, peak bearish events, and major wipeouts. This is exactly what you want to see as a bull, because again, we typically do not want to see bullish price action. Like, we do not want to see, everyone being extremely bullish and the charts going vertical. We want to see that after we accumulated blood and fear. And when we think about gold and silver, I mean, guys, gold and silver, when we think about their charts and we think about the price action, when we think about the FOMO happening around those two, I would not be a buyer of gold and silver right now. In fact, I stressed many times over to buy gold and silver when it's boring and when nobody cares about them. Right now, everyone wants to buy gold and silver. It's a FOMO story. Crypto, nobody wants to buy crypto. In fact, everyone's giving up on crypto. That's what you want to see. When we think about price action, I don't think about price action as oh, hey, it hit this price level or it hit that price level. I think about, where is max fear going to be and where's max, euphoria going to be? Euphoria is going to be up here. Fear is going to be down here. Or in our current setup, euphoria was our high back in October. Our fear level is right here. Same fear level going back to April of 2025. Back here, nobody wanted to touch crypto. In fact, everyone was scared of crypto because they said, all right, well, that's it. We are in a trade war. Crypto is going to go much lower. And I'm not the only one looking at this. Credible Crypto also mentioned on X, still above 74K, still making higher time frame, higher highs and higher lows. Yet the timeline would have you believe FTX just collapsed and we are trading at 15K for Bitcoin. Because again, everyone says that it has never ever been more over, bro. Because again, here we have a chart from Credible Crypto regarding Bitcoin, and we lost a green zone for my last tweet, then backtested as resistance, and now we've reached my next area of interest. Swept the built up lower time frame lows on the left and are bracketing in this small range here at the lows, looking for something like the blue squiggle to suggest that we may be ready to head back up and to our larger supply zone in red that we failed to reach on the last rally. But everyone thinks that it's over. Everyone thinks that crypto is done. And I'll say it many times over. If we think about Bitcoin right now, if we're looking at the 24-hour view, I don't even care about Credible Crypto's view on Bitcoin. The main thing that I'm looking at here is if we have these higher lows, okay, the last prior higher low when we had a nice little rally, we're talking about, this was a 17% rally on Bitcoin. Then we dropped about 10.78%. We managed to rally next about roughly 15.88%. We just dropped again about roughly 12.07%, which means technically if we are going to have something similar happen this time around where we hit like a 15% push, we will near $100,000. I think on this next run up, because I do think that Bitcoin technically has been consolidating, especially when you look at the weekly view, it feels very similar to this. On the next run up, when we finally break over this structure that we're currently trading in on Bitcoin, it's not just going to go to like 100K. No, in fact, we're going to go even crazier on this chart, very similar to what we did back in May of 2025 from the lows of April, where we did have a massive, and I mean, this was a crazy 50% rally nearly on Bitcoin, a 50% rally on Bitcoin right now, a 49% rally. We're just going to go off of the 49.93. That would take us to $131,000. I do think that that's possible. I think that that is, fair to, say could be next on Bitcoin. And the reason why I say that is because everyone is so bearish. If we are going to go off of our current price action, say 42 days from our current level, and I don't think that we have to wait 42 days. I'm just saying, that would take us to about roughly March, the beginning of March. That would, play into the whole idea of a potential top going into Q2, or even a top going towards like the end of Q1. But we'll have to see what happens. But, the main thing that I'm looking at here is we just witnessed what gold and silver did. Crypto moves far more faster than gold and silver in a much more volatile way. We could see Bitcoin trading at $130,000 by the end of February. I mean, it could happen so fast, especially considering the fact that we have been ranging much longer here. I mean, Bitcoin ranged about 35 days back here. We are currently ranging for about 70 days. So, nearly 2 times the time than back in March throughout April. So if we think about that, the longer the base, the higher in space, I think that we could easily have a much larger rally here. I'm not going to say 100% rally, to, a crazy like 170K or anything like that. But I do think that we could easily hit $150,000 on Bitcoin, which would be a 72% jump. And a lot of people will say like, Nick, you're crazy. There's no way. There's no way that that's happening. But you got to remember, Bitcoin rallied almost 70% off these lows after consolidating for 35 days. We've been consolidating for over 70 days. So again, I'm definitely watching this. I think everyone is panicking a bit more around crypto, and I get it. We've been ranging for a very long time. XRP, since its prior high, has just been dropping for well over 184 days. So I totally get it. I understand, guys. But this is nothing new. We've waited longer in the past for, much larger price action moves. Like for an example, we go back to the bear market, right? We waited 853 days for that move that we got back in December and January of 2025. Not to mention, the slight high that we made in July of last year as well. So I'm totally fine waiting for this to play out. I'm not too concerned at all. Again, when we think about crypto, I mean, nobody cares about crypto. So if we're thinking about that at the same exact time that so many, big things are happening around the crypto market with legislation, adoption, things like that, I'm fine having crypto consolidate while everyone's jumping into these other asset classes and these other markets. I do think that they will FOMO back in once they start to see the price really go crazy. You watched FOMO happen in previous cycles if you've been in crypto for a while. If you haven't been, just go and look at other charts. You could see, these markets having FOMO build behind them. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video.